episode is brought to you by Dubby Energy Drink. That's right, Dubby. Their coffee fruit cherry extract is the star of the show. This ingredient is what makes Dubby unique and gives it its laser focus, fast reflex effects, making it perfect for gamers and creators. That's right, gamers and creators. A formula worth bragging about. They've handpicked what they believe to be 10 most critical ingredients for focus and concentration. Dubby contains important aminos and vites that canned energy drinks simply don't have. Attention to what matters. Transparency is important. Their labels disclose full ingredient amounts, and their products will never contain fillers or artificial colors or dyes. Dolby is also sugar free and keto friendly. That's right, keto friendly. So, to get that 10% off, use that code Philly John. That's right, Philly John for 10% off at WDUBBY.GG. Dave Emmons, thank you so much for jumping on with me this morning. And I know we were talking a little bit prior to going live here, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for jumping on early this morning and for doing this with me. And I'm excited to have you on. But ladies and gentlemen, I have Dave Emmons here. He is a podcast host of the Strange Reality Show. Is that correct, Dave?
Right. Strange Reality, right.
All right. And he is the author of 3 amazing books. Which is What Do They Want? Senseless Wars, A Conflict, and a combat. It's a combat, like a combat veteran's perspective to that book. Am I correct?
Yes, it is.
And you have the other book, Angels and Supernatural Entities.
Right. Yeah, I can show those on air here. There's they.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah.
What they want, and here's the Angel book, in which actually the Angel book was my 3rd published book.
Okay.
Since Supernatural Entities, and
Yeah.
And I have the Senseless Wars, in which I wish people would take an interest in it, because I get into actually who starts the wars and why they start the wars. It's all about money.
Gotcha.
So that's the important message for that. But all my books, the 3 books that are published, they all have messages to them. The first book has got my life experiences with UFOs, in which we'll be talking about. Might even insert a few angel things that a lot of people don't know about. The Senseless Wars, I guess we'll kind of hold back on talking about that. That's too much of a mix there. But my 4th book that I'm going to finish, and I got a publisher waiting for it, and it's a sci-fi book, and it's I can't say the title because it's not copyrighted yet, but it's about an ET relationship with a human being, and the human becomes a hero. And of course, in every sci-fi book, you got to have a hero, and you got to have a villain, and you got to have, this, like the Star Wars combat type stuff. And this all takes place underground here on Earth. It actually speaks to the truth about what's really going on. A lot of underground caves, bunkers, where they, where I don't want to say the word, but there's a lot of human things going on. And that there's been, so this is for educational purposes only, but they're talking about there's ETs involved, and the reptilians are the number one that they're talking about, influencing, our government and the world, and causing, and probably partly causing this chaos today with the rich elites, the billionaires. And they have some organizations that are devilish, let's just say that. And like I said, this is for educational purposes and entertainment purposes only, because I know a lot of platforms don't like you to talk about that unless you have that. But there is proof out there. I mean, Carrie Lake just played an audio portion of a phone call she had with the director of the Republican Party in Arizona, and he offered her $12 million to not run for senator. So they don't want her in there because she's anti-cabal and anti-corruption. So that's what she's running on. So she refused it. So the guy offered her 20 million. And he said the people that support him are very powerful people. This was just out. Now, this is for real. It was out on news, and a lot of news stations carried it, the conversation. So that kind of tells you that the conspiracy about the cabal and the rich people who run this world are actually involved in doing what the conspiracy says they're doing.
Well, let's jump to a few pointers here. Dave, you were born in the Midwest. You
Yep.
were raised in Illinois. You served in the U.S. Army for 3 years as a combat platoon sergeant in Vietnam.
Right.
So thank you for your service, my friend. I
Thank you.
deeply appreciate that. So now you're a podcast host. You're an author of these books. You dive deep into ETs, but you yourself, my friend, have come across some amazing issues through your childhood. Am I correct?
Yes. Yeah, I saw my first UFO when I was actually 13, and I was in the backyard. This was back in '62, so that kind of dates me. In '62, I was sitting outside. It was about 8:30. It was turning dark. It was in the summertime, and I saw this. It looked like a rectangular ship about 30 feet wide and probably about 60, 70 feet long, and it had a blue haze light underneath of it, and had a couple of smaller bright lights in front. And it come over me, and I looked up, and I was thinking, what the heck is this? This is the first time I've seen something like that. And then I ended up in bed. I don't know what happened. All of a sudden I had fear, and then I ended up in bed. And of course I had to share a bed with my older brother. We had a lot of kids in the family, 11 kids, and my dad was a blue collar guy. And so, we come up the rough way, but actually it was, in the end, it was a good way to come up. It's not like it is today that kids are it's spoiled and everything, but uh,
I
so, but a cardboard box was a playground for us. But
Heck yeah.
yeah, so I laid in bed and I felt my legs were numb, and I turned to my brother and said, "Have you heard or seen anything?" He said, "No." And then I felt there's a presence beside me standing there. Apparently, whatever happened carried me back into my bed, and it left, and then I felt more comfortable, and then my legs started coming back, to where I could feel them. And the next day I didn't say anything about it. An experience that I thought was, I didn't know what it was all about. I
Mhm.
haven't had any regrets dreams about it or anything. It just happened. But the first real big one that I saw what went on, that happened a year later with a good friend of mine. And of course, I've had these experiences all throughout my life. I still have some weird experiences. I just talked to you about something that just happened to me here just a week or so ago.
Yeah,
And
you were saying something about being shadowed.
yes, a lot of times, TI. Have you ever heard the expression being the TI? Uh, that's a targeted individual. A lot of times, the government, we don't know exactly what agency. I don't even want to name them because this is conspiracies, and this is just for entertainment purposes only. Again,
Hmm.
to kind of clear that up for the platforms, but they actually follow people who get into the subject of UFOs and also of deep state stuff, and for the about these smaller groups, the alphabet groups and everything. If they find out you're talking about that, they'll shadow ban your podcast. They'll actually lower your numbers, and they try to make you feel like, okay, I'm not getting anywhere, give up. So that's what they want you to do. They want you to stop talking about these things. No matter how small of an influencer, I'm not a small influencer. I'm in between because I'm writing books and I get the word out there. I'm also an author, not just a podcaster that gets shadow banned constantly on my videos. So that's something I have to work with, and I think everybody has to work with. And I've asked a lot of people that they say, yeah, they get shadow banned on certain topics. If
Hmm.
you talk politics, deep state, or something like a lot of these people think it's a conspiracy, but it's really not. There's
Right.
actually a lot of truth out there about all this stuff, and we're finding out more and more that it is truth. So, but I myself, I want to keep going. I actually wanted to stop, John. I actually wanted to stop podcasting because I've had some computer problems, people digging into my computer. I've been hacked, and people that I've interviewed have been
You,
hacked.
s- you so you say you've been hacked. What type of troubles and that you have you been having? I mean, have you
Well,
noticed some strange things happening or
yeah, yes, I notice the computer screen glitches sometimes, and you'll see it They usually will track me when I'm doing shows like this. You'll see glitches, and you'll see my audio. Sometimes they'll turn it off right in the middle of the show, and then it takes me a little bit to try to catch up and see what happened, what kind of controls was messed with. But you got people out there that can do anything. They say you can go to these secret sites like Proton, email, and all. No, they can track you. They can track you anywhere. Your cell phone, your television, the computer. They know when you're hitting certain keywords, and then they tune into it. There's people watching us all the time. Either that or computers watching us. The screen just glitched. It goes from right to left, and it glitches. And
Well,
that's
have you had anybody, the companies come out, take a look at your lines, double check
yes.
everything, make sure everything's good on the outside off the poles coming to the connection to the home?
Yes, I have that. I've had Spectrum come out and look at the Wi-Fi, check out everything. They say everything's fine. They got a strong signal. Also, I have a situation that this could be a paranormal thing that happens after you have, you're introduced to these ETs. My television will actually change channels in the morning. It's 7. We play sleepy time music. We call it really nice mellow music, my wife and I, during the night. And in the morning, about never fails, about 7:20 in the morning, it'll change back from channel 942 and go all the way back to 48. And 48 is Fox News. And I wake up in the morning and I hear that. It's, oh, I don't want to hear that. And I get up and change it. So every morning it happens. So I've asked the Spectrum people. They've come out a couple of times. I've had technicians inside the house taking a look at it, taking a look at the Wi-Fi. They can't explain it. I called their main office and they said, and then one guy I heard in the background, he says something about, oh my God, poltergeist or something. And this was a high technician type guy. And he said, we've never heard of the problems that you're having with your Wi-Fi or your TV, whereas somebody else is controlling it. But they can do that to anybody. But I have felt like I've gotten energy shots, like they call the dew weapon, that type of thing. And also this microwave stuff that they hit you with. They hire guys. And I heard this from a couple of people that I really believe and trust in. They talk about TI. You're a targeted individual. And when they target you, they hire these people to go out and just follow you, intimidate you. And also they have people who mess with your computers and things of this nature. And they pay people money for this they want to slow down the drip of information, and they want to know what you know. If you know too much, then they're going to start, hacking your computer. They're going to do other things. And like I said, I had a little visitor here about a week or so ago, and I looked at him. I was in the back of my complex, and I was putting trash in the dumpster, and lo and behold, about 200 feet or so away, there was a guy staring at me in a white pickup truck. And I looked, and he kept staring at me. Now, normally that don't happen. And when I turned to get in my car, I looked over, and he was still kind of staring at me, watching me. I said, this is strange. Now, I've seen people sitting in cars, in front of my building and stuff, and I've seen people at stores, and they'll be sitting there, and they'll be staring at you. But sometimes those are just goofy people. They're not the real, trackers. But this guy, I drove out, went to the road, and I went out the road, and this guy knew exactly which direction I was going. I was going to my brother's house, and I go up to 255 and go west. And I turn right, and lo and behold, there he was, parked there on the side of the road. I slowed down and looked at him face to face, and he looked at me. He kept staring at me. And I said, and then I had that funny feeling in your gut, when you find out, okay, I think this guy is up to something. So I went on by, and he got in behind me and started following me. And I thought to myself, okay, this is going to be fun. What's going to happen here now? But when I got to 255, he went on straight, and I went on 255. And I thought, good. I think what happened is when I stared at him, he knew his cover was broke. He was the game was up for him. He couldn't track me without me knowing who he was, because the way I stared at him, I said, okay, I know who you are. I know what's going on. Just go. But I had a couple of MUFON people that are very sharp and things. And we just mentioned a lady a while ago, and I don't want to mention her name about this conversation, but she told me I should have got a picture of the truck. And I thought, what if this guy had a weapon? I took a picture of him. What if he would chase me down just because I took a picture of him? So I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to provoke anything.
Right.
So these guys are prepared to do anything, I would imagine. But most of them are low-level trackers, and all they do is just
let me ask you this, Dave. Were there any type of identifying marks on this truck? I mean, you said it was just a plain white truck.
Plain white truck, yes.
And any type of, were you able to see, was it out of state tag? Was it in state tag?
I couldn't see the plate because when I first saw him, he was parked parallel to me, and I couldn't see the back of his plate or front. And then when I got on the highway, I didn't pay attention until I come up on him, and I thought there he was. Just about 100 feet from the stop sign, and pulled off the side of the highway. And I looked at him, and I didn't pay any attention to the license plate, but I know what he kind of looks like. I knew what he was in his early 40s, slightly bald-headed, like me. I was probably a little more bald-headed than him, and he was just wearing a plain work clothes type of thing. And these guys, they dress up as simple people. They don't dress up like Men in Black or anything like that. These are just low-level trackers, and all they do is they're paid to intimidate people that are putting out the word about disclosure or UFOs or putting out the truth. They don't like the truth nowadays, John.
Yeah. Well, you've seen this past summer, we had the hearings on the Hill. You had Grush, you had Graves, you had Commander Fravor, and their take on, we have in possession, ETs, non-biologicals, and we are in holds of alien craft. What is your take on that, Dave?
I think as much as the government's been withholding things, this too is that for educational purposes. As much as the government's been withholding from us, and some people are being TI'd, they're targeted individuals. They want to suppress them. They want to stop you from getting word out or your truth out or your story out. I don't think the government, I heard there's a battle. There's always some kind of misinformation or disinformation. And they always say, well, half the Pentagon wants to disclose more. The other half says, no, they don't advise it. And then they had a meeting that was supposed to happen in Florida, in their base there. And they were supposed to have a couple of senators there and a couple other staff people and scientists. And then the Pentagon people were supposed to give them a hearing over this thing, over disclosure. They canceled that meeting. It was supposed to be a pretty good meeting. I don't know if you heard about that. This was last
I haven't.
summer. It was last summer, something like that. And it was supposed to be kind of a disclosure type meeting, except the Pentagon canceled it and they didn't want to talk. They didn't want to discuss it anymore. They are reporting UFOs on videos. They're talking about that, but they're not talking about what they know. What they really should tell us is that they've been in cahoots with the ETs before 1960, and actually back in the 40s. And then Eisenhower's meeting with ETs. There's more and more proof now that's coming forward that he actually met with ETs in 1954, and he come up with some kind of a plan or a policy that, yes, you can go ahead and abduct people, don't hurt them, erase their memory so they don't remember anything, for the technology.
Now, if just recently, JFK Jr., RFK Jr., he just stated something, that we need disclosure on UFOs. That was one of his big things that he just put out. And I believe there's some type of little video on YouTube.
Yeah. Well, actually, Robert Kennedy Jr., he actually comes out and he tells people that his uncle, John F. Kennedy, was killed because several things. He said one thing, he didn't want the Vietnam War. You have these warmongers who want to make money off of wars. So John F. Kennedy didn't want the Vietnam War. And secondly, he wanted to disclose information about UFOs. That was another thing that they nailed him on. And then the third thing, he had some government policies in which he was having Robert Kennedy, who was a Department of Justice. They wanted him to go after the mafia. So
Right.
he pissed off the mafia. He pissed off the secret groups about the UFOs. Area 51 was actually going at that time also,
Right.
and then he pissed off the people because these rich warmongers who wanted to make more money off of war, and that's in my book Senseless Wars. I talk about these groups that want to start wars, and actually they do. Our country is not innocent. And you'll hear it a lot of times from some of these people who come back, like say from Russia or any other country, that we are actually not as good as we say we are. We go into countries and we create wars, we create political turmoil in order to turn these countries around into a democracy. Is that good, turning countries around in a democracy? We don't really know what a democracy is from the last couple
let
of years.
let me go back a little bit on something right there, Dave. So the JFK assassination, your look on that with him, pushing hard with UFOs and things like that. So you believe they just wanted him to be quiet about.
Yes, yes, that's they claim actually the mafia was based. That's what the Robert Kennedy Jr. has been saying, that the mafia was responsible for setting that up mostly. I drove through that area here a few years ago and drove that same, looked at the grassy knoll, and it looks the same. The buildings might have been changed a little bit, but the school suppository building is exactly the same. They haven't changed it. But you drive through there and you can see where one of the best shots that you can get is from that grassy knoll. And
Mhm.
from when I heard there was another shooter there, and if you look at the Zapruder film, you'll see where, now if you're used to firearms, like I was a combat person and I also a hunter and everything like that, when you shoot something, it goes back. It's just like you see in the movies when somebody shoots somebody with a shotgun, they fly backwards. They don't lunge forward. Well, what happened to Kennedy on the kill shot, and this had to come from the front. It had to come from the grassy knoll because, uh, you know, Oswald was up on the third floor, I think, fourth floor of the suppository, and they said that he couldn't have made that front shot. And a lot of doctors, when they looked at Kennedy in the autopsy, they they have questions about that shot, where it come from, and they said that actually there was one that made a mistake. He had a news conference, and one of the doctors pointed at the head with a pointer, and he said this shot right here was the kill shot, and he says it went in here and then come out the back, and I thought that's a mistake. I've never heard that before. It come up on some documentary that I saw, and I thought to myself, I know that's what happened. And actually, look, if you look at Oswald when he come out with the police and they had him, and he got in the hallway and there were some reporters there. They started asking him questions, and he says, "Believe me, I'm a patsy. I am a patsy." He said I had other people that did this, and
Mm.
I believe him. But why would he say he's in trouble anyway? He shot a cop. He knew he was going to prison for life, or he's going to electric chair, but he come out and said that he was a patsy. Why would he say that? I mean, it wouldn't have been no defense for him. He's just telling people that actually, I think he was being honest. He said I was a patsy and I was being used.
Let's jump forward a little bit here, Dave. So we've watched, the testimonies on the Hill. I've watched a few things with David Grush talking to different podcast hosts. He was big with talking with Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, and they had stated that his life was threatened in some sense in many different ways too. And I just find it, I guess, like it's in some sense shocking. Like the just this gentleman just wants to get the truth out, but like you said, our government wants to suppress this, keep it back, keep it held in. Why do you think our government right now wants to hold this back so tight that we don't? need to know about it?
Well, actually, I don't begin with. I know some people in ufology, and they're playing both sides of the coin. That means they're working for these alphabet agencies, and they're also ufologists, and they research. I know some personally that won't even come on my show because they're afraid I might ask the wrong questions. I don't ask the wrong questions. If I know there's something secretive they don't want to talk about, I don't talk about it. I
Right.
don't even breathe it. I let them say it if they want to say it. But I don't trust, John. I don't trust Grush or any of these people coming forward. There's disinformation, and the government is in control of things. They tell these people what to say, what not to say. Even this committee that they had, with what's this one guy, Leo Alessandro.
Hmm.
They said he was CIA. I heard once a CIA, always CIA. So I don't believe a lot of what's coming out. I think they're trying to control the narrative when it comes to disclosure, and they're actually telling us stuff that they think is relaxing us or making us feel better about what the news is about, but they're not really telling us the truth. You asked why the government wants to keep it quiet. Well, the government, and educational purposes only, and this is just for not proven, not proven facts, but what the government wants to withhold is that they're involved with these ETs. There's at least 4 ETs here on Earth underground. The reptilians mostly are the mean ones who control things, and they actually got a humanoid ET that they don't like us. They're just like us, but they don't like us. They're superior to us, and they're controlling things from the background in politics. That means most of the politicians, even the president, is controlled with puppet strings. And so they're the ones controlling things. And then you got the big rich families, the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, all this. And you got these, BlackRock and the, Main Street and Providence and all these big rich corporations, that banking corporations that are, I heard they have in excess of $60 trillion. And what they're doing is they're holding on to that money, and the rich families across the world, they belong to the elite, and they have their own little organization. I don't want to go into some of them organizations either, but they are the ones in control, and then they control the scientists. And the key factor in controlling ufologists, in controlling CIA people, ex-CIA people, money.
Hmm.
Money is the big thing. They pay them off. Look what's happening today. A lot of politicians are paying off. Uh, there's about 56 congressmen that are going to quit after this year. They're not going to run again. What that tells you is that they're afraid there's going to be some investigations coming forward, and the corruption is so thick on both sides, both parties. As this is, I don't even have to say this is for education purposes. Both sides are corrupt with money. They got money in their back pockets, and they want to just get out of the situation where they won't be investigated. But they'll still track them and find who's corrupt and who's not. But getting back to why the government doesn't want to disclose, they are utilizing ET technology in order to control us. They have technology we don't even know about. I felt some of this technology, energy, microwave, the Havana syndrome. They use that sometimes on people to discourage them also. And I have felt that myself. And believe me, well, that's just my opinion and for educational purposes, but or entertainment purposes too. But it's for me, it was for real. They can use it,
Well,
and they
well,
use it on small targets.
well. When Bob Lazar came out as a whistleblower back in the day, S4, back engineering, propulsion, things like that. He spoke, to George Knapp, and he came out with that, and they tried to basically erase him, but George was, good enough to dive deep and let people know, he did work there. He was part of this, he was part of that. And they had different sections broken off, but they were not allowed to talk to other
Right.
scientists and engineers that were working on different things. With everything that's come, I mean, even if we look back, to World War II, the whole NASA program was built off the Third Reich. If you honestly
Yes.
think about, and it It's just one of those crazy things. Now, with the technology that we're coming out with, the AI and the advancements of everything, I mean, we hold in our hands nowadays a full size computer in
Mhm.
this little gizmo.
Right.
What's your thoughts on where we are going to go within 2024? What do you feel is going to happen when it comes to UFOs, UAPs being disclosed, coming out and
Well,
about with people?
well, going back to Bob Lazar, I actually believe that guy. I believe him because they tried to kill him twice. So that tells me, he's telling the truth or he knows something. Once they start targeting you that way to try to eliminate you, that means you are holding information. And he actually, I actually believed him. And yes, these secret groups like Area 51, they're completely departmentalized. One person won't know from one building to the next what that person's doing, and they're not allowed to talk about it. If they talk about it, they could be fired, and then if they talk about it more, then they can be in really big trouble. They have ways of threatening you and taking your money away and destroying you. Actually, if you do this, uh, I just talked to a scientist here a while back. I don't want to say who he is, but he was actually working with Harvard on this holographic thing, and he was actually working on a project, and he was compartmentalized. He knew some of the top scientists that were working with him, and so he he said that he's talked to him, but only through like computer or through phone to talk to him, but he couldn't meet him in person and talk to him about the secret stuff that they're working on. But he said that he's working on a project. I asked him the question. I said, is this Project Bluebeam? And John, I think you've heard of that. It's been out there
Hmm.
quite a bit. He looked at me on the video. He said, "That's amazing." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You might have said something that I didn't know about." And he said, "I was working on it." And he was working on part of that, the Project Bluebeam, the holographic part of it. And he said, "I'll be darned." And he said to some of the people that are involved, he researched it, and he wrote me back and he said, "Yeah," he said, "some of the people that were involved, they did mention Project Bluebeam." Now, to the public, that's supposed to be a conspiracy, Project Bluebeam, but it's for real. It's entertainment purposes, okay, educational. It's for the government. They know it's real. It could be a false flag scenario in which they've been talking about. And this latest event, they were talking about the Russians having a satellite killer, a nuclear
Hmm.
satellite killer,
Yeah,
and
that was
then
big.
yeah, and Putin says that's nonsense. He says we haven't put that out there yet. They're working on it, but it's not. And it was used as a ploy to influence other politicians to vote in a certain way. And I don't want to go into that either because that's again entertainment purposes. But I don't I don't believe most of these people, and I don't want to mention names who I think are playing both sides of the coin. Louis Alessandro, I think he is. And Dr. Greer was working with them too. So I heard there was a guy that worked with Dr. Greer. He told me straight up on a video, and he told me, off air, that he knows for sure that Dr. Greer was offered large sums of money to take his information and turn it into like disinformation. They've been fooling us for years. History is not what we think it is. History, we don't know the truth about our real history. You
Yeah.
might have heard that too. And
I feel as though every time something comes out scientific, UAP wise, there's something else that they conjure up and throw it into the media to let us to forget about what
right.
was going on. It's like squirrel and we
Yeah.
go another direction.
Yeah. They look for the shiny stuff. Yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
I I'll go back and tell you about my first encounter in which I found out that somebody was tracking me. This happened. This is one of the big stories in the book. They Who are they? And then I, I I wrote this in the book, and it carries most of the pages in the chapter because it was a very big story. It was in Sedona in October 4th, 2010. I went to Cathedral Rock after I was told at the shop that they saw a UFO there at Cathedral Rock the night before. And I said, oh boy, I'll go there. It's like I parked, and it was kind of like sprinkly, kind of cloudy day, cool. And in Sedona, when it's like that, it's not pretty. So what I stopped and I started pulling out my camera. I started filming with a Sony camcorder, and in pulls behind me in a parking lot. Now we were the only two there after she pulled in, and then she got out of the car, and she was a Japanese gal, about 5'4", something like that, and she wore a white thin sweater and denims, and she had a mud splash on her left leg, denim. I turned around to her as she approached me like a little puppy, smiling at me. And I got the picture in the book, and I tell the story there. And she come up to me, and I filmed her, and I said, I'm here looking for UFOs. Are you here to hike? And I filmed her just a little bit, and then I put my camera down, and I said, are you waiting for somebody? She goes, no. And I said, are you going hiking? I said, it looks like it's raining. It's not going to be very nice to hike. She goes, no. I said, you just come here to look at the Cathedral Rock? She goes, no, I come here to meet you. I said, you come to meet me? I said, wow. And she said, we were supposed to meet. And I said,
So,
really?
how tall was she?
5'4".
About 5'4",
5'4". Mm-hmm.
and you could see her clear as day.
Oh yeah, she was right in front of me. She was right in physical. She was standing there smiling at me like a little whipped puppy, like she had her arms crossed in front of her and looking at me with her dark, piercing eyes. And I said, why are you supposed to meet me? And I said, you know me? She goes, yes. And I said, I don't know you. And she went on to say, I know you, and I'm supposed to meet you. We were supposed to meet. Now, those words mean something to me because I utilized them later on. I'm not going to say where, but that was an idea for me to continue into writing different stories about my other 3 books, combining them into a sci-fi book, in which I'm trying to finish now. But what happened was it started sprinkling. So I said, you want to get in my car so we can talk? And I was interested because there was some red flags going off about her. And since I was a combat veteran, I'm always hyper alert. And I looked around, didn't see anybody, and I thought, well, this could be a setup. But she had nothing.
No other vehicles, nothing else around.
Well, yes, there was one that drove up a few minutes later, but she had no purse, no makeup, no watch, no cell phone. It's not common for a young lady like that not to have these things, like a purse or cell phone or watch or jewelry or makeup. Just really weird. So she got in the car, and we started talking, and I asked her, I said, you're not afraid? I said, a big galoot like me, and I said, you can kick my butt? And she looks at me in piercing eyes. She says, yes. I said, oh my. Well, then that's when I'm a journalist by education, and that's how I got into book writing and making notes. So when I started asking her those questions, she started asking me questions to try to throw me off. She was trying to elicit emotional, instincts from me, like a human. They don't know emotions. These ETs that are training to be in with the human beings, like Dr. David Jacobs has a book, They Walk Amongst Us. Well, they do. I've met several, but this one here was very, very special. She was actually an ET. She told me that she had trouble with a friend at work. She asked me my opinion. What would I do? I said, well, you can't go fighting with them. You can't start trouble. If you do, the boss will fire you both. And she just looks at me.
Let me ask you this, Dave, not to cut you off, but what was your reaction when you realized, this young Japanese lady you met in Sedona was a humanoid ET?
Well, it was we actually talked for about an hour and a half, 2 hours in my car. And the questions that I asked her, and the things that she was telling me, and she put on a fake cry. And when she put on a fake cry, I could tell it was fake. She was talking about her parents treating her bad, and her brother was mean to her. And she lived in Tokyo and all this other stuff. And I put my hand on her hand, and her hand was so hot. I took my hand off, and it was like above fever pitch. It was above
Mm.
104. It was really hot. And I told her, I said, "Are you okay?" I said, "You are very hot." And I said, "It's cool outside, and you just have a real slim sweater on." I said, "That's not good enough for you." And I said, "But you are burning hot." And she looks at me. She goes, "I'm okay." And I said, "Okay, all right." And then I went to ask her. I says, I made a mistake by asking her how old she was. Well, I was curious because the flags were popping up, and she got mad at that point. She turned to me and looked at me in piercing eyes, and she said, "There is no time. There is no age. Don't you humans understand that?" And I thought, whoa, that's a Freudian slip right there. She slipped out and said something that had some meat to it. So I tried to remember all these things. And when I got back to the room, I wrote them down on a legal pad, all the notes that I took from her. And she said she couldn't read English, but she can talk English, but she knew 20 languages. And I said, "Why does a woman like you travel by yourself? And you have no phone, no watch, no." And she goes, "I just like to travel by myself." And she said, "I went and visited White Sands, New Mexico, the base there with the White Sands." I said, "Why'd you go there?" And she goes, "To see the sand." And I thought, that's a poor excuse.
Hmm.
She was there visiting the technology is what she was doing. So
Yeah, see, I would have been looking around for like cameras, like, all right, who's watching me? What the
there
hell is
was.
going on?
Yeah, you're right.
And
There was a guy who pulled up beside us in another white car, a young guy, probably in his late 20s. He had a headset on. He did not turn and look at me one time. I kept watching him. He was just a parking space over from me, and I kept watching him. And I looked at her, and I said, "Do you know that guy?" Because he was very quiet and he just sat there with his headset. He was listening in on this, is what he was doing. And she goes, "No," shook her head, "No, I don't know him." And then he took off a few minutes later, and I looked at her, and then he come back about 15 minutes later, come back, pulled in the same place, and didn't look at me. A lot of times people look around and they'll look at their surroundings. He didn't. He didn't look at me one time, and that was what peculiar to the whole thing. When somebody's following you, or even a dimensional entity, in which I've seen before, they don't look at you face to face. You can see them, in their movements or whatever, but they don't look at you. And I heard a lot of people talk about that when they see somebody dimensionally. This is beyond ghosts. This is somebody comes through the dimension of time slip, and I've seen that in Sedona. But I asked her again. I said, "Do you know that guy?" And she goes, "No." And she acted like she did. And I looked at my console. In my console, I had a gun, and I had a license to carry. I had a license to carry a gun. And being a combat
I,
veteran,
I I carry everywhere I go. Also,
yeah,
you
yeah,
just don't know.
yeah. So she knew what was in that console. She looked at me, and I said, "She knows. She can read my mind. She knows what's in that console." And it's like she told me, "Don't go for it. Everything's fine." And for some reason, to being a combat veteran and being in a situation where it could have been a setup, I was actually at ease because she was controlling me. She was dumbing me down and putting me in a position to say, "Don't worry, don't do anything, don't get a camera, don't get a gun, just sit back and witness this." So after he actually come back the third time, he went and left to come back the third time, and he just had close criteria. He looked to me like an alphabet boy.
Mm.
So I figured that's what he was, and they were following her because they knew who she was. Now the government knows these people a lot of times, and they work with them, and that's the exchange of technology, for them, allowing them the freedom to go around and check us humans out, and research us medically and also consciously. And this was an agreement that was drawn up, and this is for entertainment purposes. I got to keep saying that because you don't know what these platforms are going to say about it. But it was interesting. And after we talked for a while, I actually talked to Daryl Sims about this, and he wanted some pictures and he wanted some information, in which I never got anything back from him after that. After he got what he wanted, he didn't want to talk to me no more. That's the way some of these ufologists work. They just get information and then they use
So
it.
you You give him this information and he just totally blows you off.
In a way, because he wouldn't answer my calls after a while. But he did tell me that he said that this person is training to be human, and they're not. They're shape shifting. They could be a gray, could even be a reptilian shapeshifter. This Japanese gal, and he said she's training. That's why her temperature was really hot. She couldn't control, the shape shifting mechanism or the energy that changes their shape, and she's just new at it. So I said that sounds okay. But we after that we closed up the conversation. I asked her to meet me for breakfast in the morning, and she agreed to. And then she took off, and I tried to follow her to find out what lodge she was staying in. And she drove so fast I couldn't keep up with it. It was too dangerous. I said, "Wow."
So she drove away in her own vehicle.
Yes, she had a little white vehicle, supposedly a rented vehicle, because when I saw the inside of it had, it had GPS or whatever in it, and it was a rented vehicle, I could tell.
Mm.
But she went back to her place. I went back to mine. The next morning, I got to the place we were supposed to have breakfast, and it was about 9:25. I got there, so I told her 9:30, and she didn't show up for 15 minutes or so. But I got a message saying that she was coming. And I just felt, I said, wow, why am I knowing? I know she's coming, because I just first met her. I didn't know if she was going to show up or not, but she showed up. And then I asked her, I said, did you check out? Because she had to leave that day. She's supposed to go to Phoenix to fly to LA that afternoon. And that was the next day after that night. I talked to her.
What what type of message? Like a sense or
Yeah,
like
it was kind of like a sense that she's coming. She's on her way. And lo and behold, a minute or so later, here she pulls in the parking lot. And that's when she come over to me, and I asked her if she checked out. And I said, do you use a credit card? And she shook her head, yes, but she wasn't. She had a handler. Uh, Dr. David Jacobs said that usually these ETs, these shapeshifters are the ones that are mixing in with us, walking amongst us. They have a handler, and then they have security. Well, I already met the security. That was probably an NSA agent from what I found out later in my computer. Because my computer was hacked twice, it went to blue screen. I had to have it totally fixed, but they left an icon on the front of the computer in which nobody can identify. And somebody told me that knew a little bit about this. He was a strange person from California. He said that was NSA. They're just letting you know that they were in your computer. I said, oh, wow, thanks. That's the first I heard. Nobody can identify the icon. There was nothing in the icon. It didn't show anything. But we went around to the buttes and drove around, her and I, after breakfast. She didn't eat much. I ate mine, and I ordered for her because she didn't know what to order. And she just sat there. She ate a little bit, drank a little bit. And before that, though, we was waiting in the waiting room, and there's about 12 people in there. And there's a shop in there. And you have to listen for little cues. So when you get into journalism, it's the things that they say that are small that mean a lot. If you put them together, you string them together. And when one shoe falls, you're waiting for the next shoe to fall. That's an old saying in journalism. But she was standing there looking around, and she says, all these people. And I looked at her, I said, all these people. And I didn't say this, but it's on my mind. I said, if you're living in Tokyo, there's probably 1,000 people per block walking on the street. And she said, all these people, it's like she doesn't live in Tokyo, because 12 people is nothing like what like they have in Tokyo.
Dave, let me so okay, is she walking like a normal person? Is she
Yes,
acting like a normal person? Like
yes,
is she, just her movements, her
yes.
body language, everything is normal.
No, body language a little different. She was very subdued. She crossed her arms a lot, and she would stare a lot. Well, after we went and visited the views, we was up on top airport lookout, and we were sitting there looking over the city. I got about 9 pictures of her, and I tried to get as many as I could. But there was a Japanese older fellow that walked by us. He was fully loaded down with camera gear and stuff. He walks about 2 feet from me, looks me square in the face as he walked by, and he looked at Hiroko. That was her name, Hiroko. He looked at her and he walked by. I asked her, says, why didn't you say hi to a fellow countryman? She says, we don't do that. We don't want to embarrass people. I said, what? I said, if I see a person from from the U.S. in another country. I said, "Hi, Yank," and I said, "I'm U.S." And they say, "Yeah, I'm U.S. too." We shake hands and we talk a little bit and then break up. But she said they don't do that. She said that embarrasses people. I thought that's funny. It's weird. So we went to this restaurant before had to leave, and there's other things that happened, but I'll try to shorten the story. It's a long one. So uh, uh, we went to this restaurant before she left, and I ordered some pizza. It's a pizza joint, and I thought she had have some lunch before she left. And she watched how I ate the pizza. She didn't know how to eat pizza, so she lifted it up like I did, and she watched me. And she ate just a little bit, maybe sipped a couple little sips of water, and she sat there and she looked me in the face. And she repeated this too several times. She said, "I have to have a baby." But she said, "My boyfriend," I said, "You have a boyfriend?" I said, "Get married and have a baby." She goes, "He's mean. I'm not going to marry him." And my parents want me to have a baby. And she goes, "I need to have a baby." And I said, "Why do you need to have a baby?" I said, and she didn't say anything. And she looked square in my face, in my eyes, and her dark, beady eyes were very powerful, and I could feel them. I'm a person, I'm empathic, and I can feel energy, I can feel people. And she was so strong. I said, "You're burning the back of my head, Hiroko. Please don't do that." And she said, "I like you." I said, "You like me? Okay, I like you too." I said, "But who are you? How do you know me?" She said, "I just know you." And she said, "Like I said, we were supposed to meet." And she repeated that she had to have a baby. And that was weird. Okay, so then she went to the bathroom first time, she went to the bathroom at the breakfast thing too. I think she might be going into the bathroom.
Was there at any point, Dave, you thought during all this, okay, maybe she's out there a little bit, maybe she's mentally challenged, like she just doesn't know what the hell is going on or what she's doing?
No, no, there's never that. I just felt that she was not from here. All the time that I talked to her, I felt her energy. I felt the questions that she answered, the things that she said, just didn't fit in, and she didn't behave like an average young lady. Because the next day she showed up with the same pants with the same mud splotch on her pant legs, and a lot of times women don't do that.
Right.
They're more they keep themselves up pretty well, but she didn't know how to be human. Uh, but but after the lunch thing, she went to the bathroom twice. Well, once that morning for breakfast, and that afternoon for lunch. But I think she went in to regurgitate. This time she had a little black bag. It was a cone shaped bag, and I didn't know what was in it. She took that to the bathroom with her, and I don't know exactly what that was, but it seemed like to me, I had a feeling that when she ate, she regurgitated, because that's not the food that she eats. She probably
Right.
drinks some liquid or something. You asked me how I know. Here's how I know she was alien, and the reason why I put her in the book, because I wouldn't want lawsuits to happen. Put somebody in there in my book, and they're not alien. Well, here's what happened 5 months later, John. This is what really cemented the whole thing. The other shoe dropped. I had my notes on her, and I was, I didn't really. I talked about it a little bit, but I couldn't confirm it. But the confirmation come 5 months later is March 17th, 2011. My cousin and I was sitting on my front porch in Illinois, and we were smoking cigars. It was a nice day, about 73, 74 degrees. And for Illinois, that's pretty nice on St. Patty's. So we were sitting there enjoying the day and smoking. All of a sudden, about 300 feet away at the stop sign before the two-lane road, we jump on the two-lane road there. There's three people standing there. And my cousin looked at me and he goes, "Are those Chinese?" I said, "No, those are Japanese." He said, "Do you know them?" I said, "I might." They started walking towards us. And there was a lady with them, looked like Hiroko, exactly like Hiroko, had the same white sweater, same denims, and walking towards us. And there was two young boys with her. They were about 15, 16 years old, and they were kind of tall and kind of big boned for Japanese young guys. And they wore like, teenager clothes. And they walked up. Now, Hiroko turned around the other way, and she looked the other way. She didn't want me to see her face because at a distance I couldn't see her, but she did turn around before she got too close. and she looked the other way while these two young boys come up my driveway, and they only stood about 10 feet away from my cousin and I on the porch. and and my cousin said, "Do you know them?" I said, "No." And the tall one, the older one, asked me, says, "Where's the Walmart?" And I said, "It's just right past that overpass there. It's about a quarter mile." And he goes, "Okay." And then after that, I couldn't talk. We were dumbed down. My cousin, who usually talks a mile a minute, he actually asks so many questions, he gets rude. So I turned around to him, and his eyes were glassy, and he was looking down at the floor of the porch. And I thought, what's going on? And I wanted to ask him, I tried to mouth it, "Is that Hiroko that's with you?" And I couldn't do it. I couldn't talk. The only thing I could do is watch and look. And these two just stood there with their dark, piercing eyes too, and they were looking at me. And I thought, oh my God, I know what this is. I know who that is. That's Hiroko. I wanted to say it. They knew I wanted to say it because I was reading my mind. Lo and behold, I didn't know this until a little bit later that the tallest one, the oldest one, walked past me and went into my door just to my right. He pulled out this leather, I call it leather case. It's weatherproof casing for my notes that I take with me. And in that case was notes on his mother. Now, I want to say this is his mother. Hiroko was these two boys' mother, and I was actually a grandparent of these two. This is what it boiled down to. This is through my research and people telling me. I've had some people that are very spiritual, and they told me that those were my sons, from grandsons, and they didn't really know all the information, but they come out and told me this is what happened. And so I believe these people that can come out of thin air and tell you stuff that really happened, and they don't know your story. I believe them more than I do, psychics making up stuff or whatever. But we sat there, and all I can do was observe. And then so he looked at me.
You couldn't move at all.
No, just my
you
eyes.
Couldn't speak. You couldn't move. Nothing.
No,
You're like basically in a frozen state,
right?
And all you're able to do is just move your eyes.
Yeah, just move my eyes. I can move my head a little bit, and that was about it. I guess I was supposed to observe and not do anything. That's what the whole purpose of being dumbed down. I call it dumbed down. But this guy, the taller one, the young kid about 16, he pulled up some notes, and then he'd give me a dirty look. Those notes were on his mother that I wrote from Sedona, and I kept them in the pouch. But those notes disappeared. I checked the day several later after I come to my senses. I said, he messed with those notes. I looked, and some of the notes were taken. But he was fooled. I fooled him, or I fooled anybody. I typed those notes into my computer. So they were on my computer, not just in the handwritten notes. So
he got the paper evidence, but you had the hard evidence in your computer. Gotcha.
Right. But apparently he went back in, and I didn't even see him go in. And he put the case back where it was supposed to be. And then they turned and walked away. And I was watching them walk away, and my cousin didn't even see them walk away until they hit my street, which was about 100 feet ahead. And then he got there, and he started waking up. And he looks at me and he said, "What the hell just happened?" And I said, "Hold on, it's still going on." And I said, "They're walking towards Hiroko." He said, "Who in the hell is Hiroko?" I said, "She's an ET that I met in Sedona." And he was scared. He was pale white. He was really scared. This is his first time he's ever been through something like that. And he looked at me, and he got up, started cussing me, calling me names. He said, "They're going to kill you one of these days, these ETs." He said, "You keep messing with them." I said, "I don't keep messing with them. They come to me." And then I said, "Let's just watch what happens." They met up with Hiroko. I call her Hiroko because it was her. Folded her arms, exactly the same body language you talked about and everything else. And so they met up with her, and they walked up to the stop sign. And I said, "Let's just watch what happens." And before our eyes, we didn't even really realize it, they disappeared. We could see down the road, and we can see up the road. So they did not have a car, no vehicle. They didn't walk down the road or up the road. They just disappeared.
Just
gone, like
just vanished.
Yeah, they were. I guess beam me up, Scotty. Teleported. And they were gone. And my cousin just went crazy. He got in his truck and he said, "F this." He said, this is just too much for me to handle. He said, He said, "My God," he said, "This is." He said, "I've never seen anything like this." I said, "Well, you just met some ETs." I told him.
Dave, now over your years of doing this, I'm sure you've come across skeptics and
Oh yeah,
people who have disbelief in all
yeah.
this. How do you navigate the skepticism and the disbelief from others regarding your paranormal experiences?
By telling the truth, everything that's in my book, I can detail it, but just like I detailed this story. That story you can see in the book. I've had a lot of hosts that had me on the shows, and they told me they said you're something else. I said, what do you mean? They said you're very detailed, but you also tell the same story, exactly how it's in the book and how you remember it. And he said liars can't be that detailed. I said I'm not a liar. That's for sure. That's why I'm not afraid of
So
facing people.
every time you tell the story, you're getting the exact same words, the
Yes,
exact same emotions,
yes,
the way you're running it as
right,
you're telling me today.
right. Yeah. I left off some of the story because I didn't want to go into length, about
Right.
some of the things that we went to visit and took a little walk. It was too muddy and stuff like that. I left that kind of stuff out because I just wanted to get to the meat of the story. But yeah, my book is detailed, and a lot of people who read it, they say it's very detailed. And a lot of people who tell their stories, sometimes it's more cerebral than it is, uh, like a contact with somebody. If you have contact with a UFO, I've seen 6 UFOs up close, and David Jacobs and also Mac, all these scientists, they say if they come within 100 feet or 150 feet of you, you're the target. They've got you, they got you
Mhm.
pinned, and they're going to either abduct you or upload your consciousness and your memory and find out who you are. They can track you by DNA frequency. They don't need implants. And Daryl Sims, he's one of these implant guys, and the implants are real. I've had a couple. I've taken out 2 of them, and I know what they are. But they're more for neurological control. They actually have little neurons. It looks like brain, cells that goes into your body, and they attach to your nervous system. They get into your brain, and they're altering your DNA to somewhat or adding to your DNA, and that way they can make subtle changes with your consciousness and your thoughts. And I think that has affected me throughout my life. It's actually gained me IQ points. My IQ has actually rose from those types of things that they've been, the encounters I've had and also the implants. But yeah, it is. I've had an amazing trip. I with BTs, and this it still goes on today. I still
Yeah.
have little things that go on.
What
Um,
what motivates you to, continue researching and documenting like this paranormal phenomena, despite, skeptics and critics and stuff.
well, what motivates me is I want to know the truth. Being curious, like a cat, and it's of course curiosity can kill a cat, and sometimes I'm afraid of that. And actually, about 2 months ago, before I went to the Philippines, I was actually thinking about quitting doing this, talking about it, because I do get hacked. I do get, they're reading in on me. They're following me. I'm a TI, targeted individual, and I just told you the story of this guy tracking me
Mhm.
just a week or so ago. And I guess I can talk about that because the more you talk about it, the truth is out there. But I usually see people that'll stand around that are different. That I
Yeah.
can I can read their energy, and I'm an empath for sure. And so actually there's a group that's working with me now. They are actually saying I can be a healer. I have electricity in my body, and sometimes when I touch my wife, it hurts her on her. I touch her on the shoulder, the back, and she said your electricity is strong, and she said it hurts, and so.
Can
Uh,
you give me a little more in depth on that?
Well, electronics. Okay, when I'm around electronics, if my energy is up, if I get a little frustrated, like everybody does, and like if you're waiting in line or your energy starts going up, and or if you get a little bit upset, adrenaline flow, I don't get really mad anymore. I have that sense of control, but actually my electricity gets up. My cell phone when I want to take a picture sometimes. it won't let me take a picture. When I touch it, it won't go off. I have to give it to the wife and make her take the picture because my hands are electric. I said, I'll tell her, I said, my electricity is too high. Go ahead and take the picture for me. Yeah, and she
Gotcha.
knows it. She automatically knows this because she knows I have that kind of electricity in me. So that was from an abduction that I got almost electrocuted back in 2011, and I think this Hiroko had something to do with that. But no, I know that these things are with me, and I've been given some gifts, for them messing with me and taking semen samples from me, blood samples, and putting implants in me and studying me. Uh,
Have you been to any type of physicians? Have been fully checked over? Any type of scars, markings, things like that, that they have written down, like, where the hell did this come from? Because this isn't made by
yes,
us. Yeah.
yes. The last few years, I've got pictures, these little holes in my left leg. And usually it's always on the left side. A lot of experts say that when they do implants or when they mess with you, it's always on the left side. I just here recently, there's been other things in the past. I got pictures of my implant and the other implant when I was 14. I didn't have a picture of that. I took that out myself through my testicle, and there was a red line cut there. This was after my second actual in 1963 with my friend when I saw this close UFO. It was only about 75 feet off the ground, and we stood there watching it. But it was about 2 weeks later I found a lump in my testicle, and there was a red line cut, a real thin red line. And back then, I didn't know what that meant. We didn't know anything about laser cuts. And I pushed this thing that looked like an Advil pill out of that cut, out of that red line, and
You 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 literally push this thing through your testicle.
through the skin of the
Do
testicle.
do you
Yeah,
do you still have
no,
the
no. Oh, I took it out. It took me about 4 or 5 minutes to get it out. I worked it out through the red line. How I knew that red line was for that, I was 14. I guess I just kind of common sense figured out that, okay, I'm going to push this thing back out because I felt that lump. And it was about the size of an Advil or a small M&M. And it was kind of like ash color, light ash color. And I put it in my hand. There was no blood in that laser cut. None. I expected a little blood, but nothing. It didn't bleed at all. And I had it out in my hand and it started turning darker as I had it in the oxygen. I took it to my mom and I showed my mom. I said, Mom, this come out of well, I had other words for it as a kid, but
right?
my testicle. And she said, oh, it's just an ingrown hair. I said, she said, throw it away. I said, no, Mom, it's not an ingrown hair. She looks at me funny. She said, what do you mean? I said, there was a line cut. There was a hole cut for it. It went through this hole, this line. And she was stumped. She didn't know what to say. And then she said, throw it away anyway. Of course, back in 63, we knew nothing about UFOs. We knew nothing about
She didn't
implants.
take you to no hospital, no doctor?
No,
Just
no, no, no. It wasn't nothing wrong. There's no blood. There was no bleeding. It was fine. She asked me, said everything. I said everything's fine. I said didn't even bleed, Mom. I took it out, and so no, it was forgotten about. She just said throw it away and forget about it.
I would have been like, damn, man, I'm going, if something comes out of my testicle, I'm heading right to the ER
Yeah,
or
yeah.
whatnot,
Now I
But
would, but back then we didn't do that. It wasn't. We didn't even think about that.
uh,
But yeah,
that-
they put implants in, but they put implants in for different reasons, not to track you. They can actually track you by your DNA frequency. We all have different DNA frequencies. The implants are made for something else. There's metal implants in which I think I have one in my thumb, and I've had doctors take a look at it. I haven't decided to take it out yet because if a regular commercial doctor takes out something out of your body, they throw it away. Sometimes you don't even get a chance to see it.
right.
They tell you what it was, or they might not tell you what it was. But you don't have Dr. Lear now. He's not around to take out the implants, and what he does, he researches them and he puts them in a container and he keeps them as proof of implants. But the regular doctor would just throw them away because they'd call it a biohazard, so they throw those things away. So I don't know if I want a regular doctor to take it out that's in my thumb, but they felt of it and they know there's something there, and it's hard. And if it was a bone chip, then I'd have trouble moving my thumb, but I don't. It's just right there.
Have you had it x-rayed?
Yes, yeah. It
And
shows up on X-ray.
it does.
Yeah.
What does it look like?
It actually on X-ray shows up as a little white ball, but it's actually elongated. It's about 3/8 of an inch or longer, and it's hard. It must be a carbon type of base implant like I had in my
It
leg.
doesn't look like some type of fragment of bone or anything like that. It just
It could resemble a fragment of bone, but like I said, if it was, my thumb would be difficult to move. It would hurt. So
okay.
it's not. And they've examined it. They touched it. The doctors have, and they said, well, we give you a thumb split, a thumb split, to help your thumb. And I don't wear it. And I knew it was nonsense, but he said if it comes down to it, he said if it starts bothering you more, he said we have to remove it, and that's why I'm afraid for them to remove it, because if I know what it might be, and then when they throw it away, they're not going to tell me. They're going to tell me it's a bone chip because they wouldn't know how to explain it. It's like you asked me a while ago if I had other marks. I've had a lot of marks on my body, like red marks, circular marks. I've had some that look like a small triangle mark. Even my wife's had marks on her back where they did DNA testing on her, like a razor blade scrape across her back. So they're checking your partner too for DNA. But I had here recently, just in the last year, I had a series of 3 lines of holes in my left leg off to my left calf here. And there was about 12 holes in all. And there was 3 lines, and they were straight in a line. And they weren't blisters. They weren't anything that was scaly. So they couldn't really track it. So I showed the doctor these marks, and I showed him pictures as they progressed. And so he looked at the pictures, and he looks at the marks that they're about all gone when he looked at them. But he looked at the pictures. He didn't know what to think. He wrote down on the diagnosis, he said, patient has rash. And also that same night, I had the night of that, what happened is I got up and I was really dizzy, and the room was going around and around, and the TV in the bedroom was changing from one wall to the next. And it wasn't vertigo, because I've had vertigo before. It makes you kind of sick in your stomach, like, and you get a little dizzy and you have to lay down. But I was dizzy, but I wasn't sick. I felt my heart. I was, judging what was going on with my body, and nothing was going on with my body. So I had to lean back until it went away. And for about 5-6 minutes, it finally went away, and I was able to get up. And then I thought, what the heck is wrong? I think I was being hit with energy at that point, or I was dumbed down, put to sleep, because then the next morning I went to work out and I got on my stationary bike. I looked at my leg and I saw those holes, about 12 little round holes in line. And I said, oh no. I said, that's what it was all about. So I tied them together, the being dizzy and being like basically dumbed down that night. And the next day, these holes appeared. And one guy told me, in which I think he's CIA connected, ufologist, and I don't want to mention names there, but I've met a lot of interesting people that's given me little hints and little pieces of the puzzle. He said those holes are not made by ET. I said, what do you mean? He said they're made by they're military industrial complex groups, secret groups that do this. They back engineered how ETs abduct us and dumb us down, and they actually invisibility. They know about how to be invisible, come in your house, and things of that nature. That's why a lot of times people think, well, those are ghosts, or those are, I think it's ETs, but they could have been, military industrial complex secret groups, entertainment purposes only for this one too. So because it can't be proven. But he said that those holes, one hole is to draw out plasma, the other hole is to put plasma back in, and then it just keeps going until it made about 12 holes, and it was exchanging blood plasma with me, and it was inserting other types of plasma or DNA. So that's
did you have issues with walking?
no
Any major pains?
it hurt a little bit. It burned. It didn't really have pain. It burned. Yeah, I couldn't figure it out. It was burning. It was kind of hot to the touch, and I thought to myself, "Wow, this is weird. This is different." And so, those holes I took pictures back in 2012 and 2014. I had the same similar holes, and I showed the pictures to the doctor. That
Mm.
kind of blew his mind. He looked at me weird, and he didn't know what to think. So I've told doctors these things that happen to me, and they'll look at me strange. But I don't go into UFOs because most doctors don't understand UFOs or ETs, and they don't want to talk about it in their medical field. They don't even want to have a diagnosis. I had an eye doctor one time when I saw a real bright blast in Nevada, going to a conference there at Alamo, Nevada, near Area 51, and it was a real bright blast in my face, and I couldn't see anything. It happened to me in the car. The light just come in waves across the windshield. I was
Almost like a flash burn, like a welder
Yes,
would get.
right. And I pulled over because I couldn't see. I even had sunglasses on. I couldn't see, so I had to wait until I got my eyesight back, and then I drove on. But my eyes were burning, really burning. So I went to a doctor, I guess 2 or 3 weeks later, and this gal, she examined my eyes, and she kept looking at my right eye, in which that was the one that was burnt. And she kept looking, and she shined the light on that hurt. And I said, "Wow, that hurts." She said, "Have you been welding lately?" I said, "No." I said, "I haven't done anything to hurt the eye or burn it." And she said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah." She said, there's some, like a scarring in your retina. And she said, "It doesn't look serious, but it looks like it could go away." But she said, and she wrote it down. And then I told her, and then she kind of got friendly about things. And I told her, I said, that could have been a UFO if you really want to know the truth. She looked at me, she said, "UFO." And then she wrote it down on the diagnosis. She
Do
said,
you think
"Patient."
maybe there was some type of testing going out there by Area 51 that
Yeah,
you may have seen?
yeah, yeah. I couldn't explain that except that the light come in waves. I think it was intelligently controlled, and it hit me. And I had to turn my head and fall off the side of the road because I couldn't see. But I thought it was something that was just hit me. To maybe I was abducted, because my brother, I called him, and he kept tracking me because he was afraid I was going to be abducted. Believe my family's really, they're keyed. They're keyed up on this stuff. They know about
Yeah.
UFOs. Actually, some of them have. My mother's had a UFO ET experiences throughout her life, and I thought about doing a show with her. She's 96 years old, and I thought about doing a show with her, and I will soon. And she has experiences she wants to talk about, and she talks to me. And my other brothers say, "How come she talks to you about this stuff?" I said, "Because she knows I'm an experiencer, and that I understand what she has seen and what she's been through." And so I got to get that story,
That's the new
quick.
term now, the experiencer. Am I correct? It's not
Uh,
abductee, it's experiencer.
it's a contactee.
Yeah.
The new word for abductees is contactee, because contactees, if you've been visited more than one time, you're a contactee. That means they come back and they check up on you and they do tests,
It's
and
like they
they,
put you in a Rolodex, here's
yeah, right,
we're
right,
looking for
right.
Dave.
And I've actually, accidentally called a couple of people abductees, and they said, "No, Dave, contactee." And I said,
Gotcha.
"Okay, yeah, okay, that sounds good. It sounds reasonable." But whatever it is, you've been abducted, and then you're made into a contactee because they keep following up on you.
Now, Dave, I've never had any experiences. I keep an open mind.
Yeah,
I don't judge, I don't criticize. I like to hear people's stories. I like to learn what people have seen, what they have gone through, things like that. As I said, I don't judge anybody. And I love hearing people's stories, what they went through, how they're, I guess you can say, maturing as life goes on with
right.
what their daily actions are. After all these things and everything that has happened with you, looking ahead, what are your goals, your aspirations for the future, research and writing and things like that?
Well, I'm expanding my reach on my podcast. I'm not a production engineer person. I think I told you that, John. And I'm not a marketing person for my shows. My shows could reach a lot more people, but I don't know. I don't know how to do all that techie stuff.
Well, not to cut you off, but with this episode at the end in my descriptions, I will have links to your show, your social medias, and your books. I will have a link to where people can look and purchase your books in the
Right.
descriptions at the
Okay.
end
Well,
of this.
that'd be great. I appreciate that. But yeah, I want to continue writing, John. And I got this fourth book I'm going to finish up. It's sci-fi. But then my publisher wants me to go back in to my UFO experiences and write a more detailed what what actually is behind the psychology of all this and myself and my thoughts about what really is going on. Since I say in my first book, what do they want? Well, I've been figuring that out and researching more and more. And my idea is to talk to as many people as possible because they always have a piece of the puzzle to fit together. One of the strange things about this with people, I like to get people on that have never talked about their stories. And they got some fascinating stories. I shouldn't say stories, experiences, let's call it.
Right.
Yeah, and because stories are something could be made up, but experiences are something that they witnessed. But I try to get these people on, and sometimes the day before the interview they back out because they're afraid, and their family members tell them not to come on my show. Well, there's certain reasons for that, but I don't want to discuss that because, like I told you, I've been hacked, and I
Well,
don't. Yeah,
this does come with a stigma. There are people are afraid. People are scared if
yeah,
they come out with this. People are going to look at them like, okay,
right.
this person's a kook. He's out there. She's out there. They have mental issues, whatnot. But as I said before, you have to keep an open mind. There is a lot of evidence out there that people have seen these craft. There is video. Now with the cameras and the things that we have today, we should have better, clearer images. That's all I have to say. There's just too many fuzzy images out there.
Yes.
Let's start focusing on getting better images for people to
Well,
see.
I must say this, John. I get into Bigfoot. I believe in Bigfoot, but all the films that I've seen by Bigfoot are actually worse than UFO films. I mean,
Yeah.
some of these people jitter the camera around and they shake it around and they show it. They show the ground, and they pop up real quick and show something dark and hairy going between the trees, and then they put the camera back down to the ground. I'm wondering what the hell is going on there. Why
Right.
can't they just can't they just keep the camera on the furry critter?
Yeah.
And all these films are like that. And the UFO pictures and videos are actually better than Bigfoot pictures, I must say, but
Yeah.
you don't know if they're CGI or what anymore. We don't know what to believe.
Yeah. That's that is a big thing nowadays with the whole AI being able to design and come together and create these images. But
Right.
we got to keep an open mind. We have to look, to the future, see with better cameras, better evidence, and make sure we're seeing the proper stuff.
Right. Right. Yeah, my green screen behind me, I explained earlier, I usually throw up some posters, some pictures, and I do have some of my ET pictures on there, except I can only utilize it on Zoom, and I
Mm,
have that libraried on Zoom. But I do have. I actually was visited in my condo back in 2020, and it was a strange story that happened there. That the night my wife went to the Philippines by herself, I didn't go. I had other things I had to do, I guess. But she went and she left that night. My alarms, my motion sensors downstairs. I have 2-story condo, and motion sensors downstairs were going off. And the first one that went off, I trust this system very well. It never fails. It never gives false indications. And I heard it, and I said, "Oh, somebody's in the house." So I grabbed my weapon and my flashlight. And so, yeah, you can't have a gun in your own house, okay?
mm.
So I go downstairs and I look for what's going on. I couldn't find anything. I go back upstairs, and about an hour later, it went off again. And I laid there and I just listened for more noises because I'm not going to be chasing ghosts, I guess you could say. But I laid there, and then it went off every hour all throughout the night. It went off about 8 times. And in the morning, my wife called about 8 o'clock in the morning, she heard the alarms going off over the phone. And the first thing come to her mind, she must be an empath and we're connected. But the first thing come to her mind, she said, "Your buddies are there, aren't they?" And I said, "Yeah, I think they are." And
Mm.
so the next night I got my trail camera and I set it up on my kitchen table and to catch whatever was moving around in my house. Lo and behold, I got 3 pretty decent videos and pictures of what was in my house. I actually got 2 of them posted on my reels in Facebook. If you go to my Facebook
Oh,
page
you
on
have a
reels,
okay.
yeah, there's 2 of them on there. Yeah,
And they're super clear?
yeah, they're pretty clear. But some people who don't want to see them won't see it. But the people that have an open mind to take a good look at it, I have actually a reptilian looking into my infrared trail camera, which was, it detects motion. And it looked into my camera and it blinked its eye twice and then it raised up away from the camera. It was right in the camera lens. And of course, the diodes.
When you say reptilian, you give me a picture. What do you see?
Well, in this picture, this reptilian, in which I had an argument with a guy. There's different types of reptilians, aliens. This one had a little bit smoother skin. It had kind of a grayish green skin, and it had black dots throughout its skin. And you can only see that, in the camera. Well, I sent these videos to a MUFON field investigator. He was the head investigator in Missouri, and he was a good buddy of mine. Nice guy. He was a documentarist. He made movies, and he knew all about videos and stuff. So I sent them to him. An hour later, he calls me. He said, "Dave, I hate to tell you." He said, "That's not a little gray looking into your camera." He said, "That's a reptilian." I said, "Oh my God." And he goes, "Yeah." He said, "That's a reptilian that's looking in your camera." And he said, the other creature
How
that you saw,
how tall?
you couldn't tell. Couldn't
You
tell.
couldn't tell?
He bent down and looked into the lens. So I couldn't tell how tall he was. It didn't show. It just showed his face and showed him blinking his eyes. You can see his eye blinking, and so yeah, you can see that on the reels on Facebook. You go to my Facebook page, look up the reels, and you'll see the two videos I have there. And I have another one of the Michelin Man, and this MUFON field investigator, head investigator, told me that was the Michelin Man that I saw going up my steps. I said, "Michelin Man," and I never knew too much about that. See, I didn't know. He was actually explaining to me what they were. He was confirming that I did have visitors, and he was telling me what they were and who they were. And because he said he interviewed a colonel a few years before that, he sent me the video of his interview with this Air Force colonel who said they worked with tall white aliens who wore suits that looked like Michelin Man. They had concentric circles around their suits and they white.
This colonel, is he retired? Is he still in?
Yeah, he was retired. Yeah, and
He was
said,
retired.
yeah, he worked.
Where was he based out of?
I think he was based out of I think Wyoming or one of the Air Force bases out there. I'm not for sure. I can't remember all those details, but I did listen to his interview with him, and he did explain that they worked with these tall whites, and these tall whites had an attitude, and they were kind of sometimes hard to work with, but you was afraid to make them mad because they were bigger, they were taller than they were, but they wore these white suits that had concentric rings around all the way up. And in the pictures that I got, they were stills, 3 stills. He was going up my stairs to my bedroom, and he looked back the third time over there wasn't any post at the bottom of the stairs. A lot of people said, "Oh, that's a post that's got design." I said, "No, there's no post at the bottom of my stairs. Only a handrail to the right side that goes up." And so that I squashed that theory, but this thing walked up and it was tall. And at the last picture, it got 3 pictures. The last one, he's looking back, and I tried to recreate that. I tried to walk up the stairs like he did, and I tried to look back where he was looking back, but I wasn't tall enough, or to reach around and look down like that to where he was looking.
So you were trying literally to debunk your own film.
Yes, I do this all the time. I do it all
Okay.
the time, and I keep thinking about that film with that reptilian, and also I got a bright entity that's all light that comes in the kitchen, and it's on film. It's on the reel, It's on the Facebook reel on my page. It'll show you to the right. It'll a tall white, really bright entity, and with streams of energy going to it, like it was materializing right in my kitchen area, and then there was orbs that were released after it materialized, and then the film went off. But you can
Hmm.
see that to the right. Yeah. So I've got several pictures. I also got pictures from my office room of a portal, looking round circular thing.
Dave, are these in your book as well?
Yes, I talk about in my book. I don't have the pictures of those in my book, but I talk about those. Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay, so we can find them on your Facebook page.
Yes.
Awesome, awesome. Dave, I honestly, I want to thank you so much for jumping on with me this morning and having this chat. It was a lot of fun. It was lot of information that you threw out to us. And as I say, I tell people keep an open mind.
Yes.
You know,
Consciousness.
yeah, and no matter what, you're always going to have those skeptics, and you're going to have those critics that are going to jump at you and, oh, he's this, he's that, whatever. But we have to keep an open mind. We have to, with everything that's been going on in the world and all the evidence that is out there. I think your stories are going to relate to people, and they're going to open up, I think, and let their stories out.
Right.
And
That's what I want. That's what I want, John. I want other people to open up about their experiences. But I did a show here a while back. I don't want to say the show. It's on YouTube, and this young fella had me on there, and I got quite a few hits on that YouTube. And also, the biggest thing I saw was the thumbs up and the thumbs down. The thumbs up was 118, and the thumbs down was 0. So people are they listen to the detail, and that's what they're looking for. They're not looking for somebody that's dreaming things up. The cerebral, I call them cerebral memories. You got to be careful about those. There's got to be something tangible involved. I'm not saying that I'm not believing anybody that, because ETs can work with your consciousness and your brain and actually put in things in your head and take things out. So
telepathic.
yeah, so we don't know if these are real, but actually the detailed, tangible items connected with an abduction or with memories, like seeing close-up UFOs, that's a dead giveaway that you've been nabbed. I do have dreams and visions, lucid dreams of being on board ships. I've got about 4 or 5 of them. I think I wrote them in the book. So I got those that I also saw, and it was almost so real. I mean, it was like I was there. And I had the frozen body
Mm.
happening 6 years in a row. And I actually told my doctor about it, and she was one of the best doctors I ever had. And she had a student with her. And I told her about my body being frozen about 3 o'clock in the morning, and the whole bed was shaking because I was so cold. And I felt my arms, and I felt like I was dead. My body was totally frozen, like I was been in the freezer. Now, my wife usually wakes up, okay? Even when my cell phone hits the carpet, a little thud, she wakes up. So what's that? But she did not wake up. I didn't think about that until the next morning. I got up and I told her, and I had to go to the bathroom to take a pee. After you're cold, you take a pee. Nothing was in my head. I was
Hmm.
empty, completely empty, not thinking of anything, and I was just frozen. And I was laying with my hands across my body like I was in a coffin. And I don't lay like that. I don't lay on my back with my hands like that in front of me. So something was just weird about that whole thing. So I got back in bed and I was shaking, and then I passed out because I was so exhausted. I told the doctor, I said, she checked my blood samples and everything. She said, everything looks good. She said, you shouldn't have that. She said, was it cold? I said, no, it's in August. It was August 11th. And I said, it was hot. And I said, the room was at 72, and I wore a blanket and a sheet. And I said, no, it wasn't that it was hot or cold in the room. And she goes, well, I don't know what to tell you. Nothing shows up on your medical. And I said, I have something else to tell you. And she goes, what's that? I said, this has happened 6 years in a row. I've documented it in my ledger and my notes. And I told her the dates. They all happened between August 11th and August 13th. And only one happened out of sequence, and that happened in January. But that January is when I was visited by these ETs in my house. So they may have not needed to do that, but they
Mm.
did it in January. She looks at me and she said, same date? I said, yes. She looked at her person that she was training, And they both, their eyes got real big, and she says, David, I don't know what to tell you. She was lost. So you
Yeah.
asked me if I talk to doctors. Yes, I do. But I've told her other strange stories. I actually give her a copy of my book after it was published, and so she could read up my medical stuff.
That's how you get them.
Yeah, right. But yeah.
But Dave, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Dave Emmons. And like I said, Dave, I'll have all your links in the description below. And thank you so much for your time today. And
Thank
I
you.
deeply appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, John. You've been an excellent host, and I really had fun talking to you.
Awesome.
And,